everybody. This week, our special guest is Stan Kiles, former big league bullpen coach and Indianapolis Indians pitching coach. And we'll be back to talk to Stan after these words. Stan Kiles is our guest this week, and Stan, a former Indianapolis Indians pitching coach on a couple of occasions. That's how we got to know him. Also a big league bullpen coach with the Brewers. Stan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Howard. Good to hear from you. Good to talk to you again. Been away from Spartanburg, doing a lot of walking the park with the dog. I get a chance to get out on the golf course and swing the clubs a little bit. So it's very nice. We're enjoying our time.
Well, that's good. Now, you grew up in Chicago. Were you a Cub fan or a White Sox fan?
For me, I'm a Chicago fan. I mean, I grew up about a mile away from the White Sox, so obviously the colors around the neighborhood were a lot of black and white. But obviously with the Cubs, you got the television on WGN, and you can't help but fall in love with them as well. But any Chicago team, I try not to, if there were two basketball teams or two football teams, I'd probably root for them both as well. So anything Chicago, I'm good with.
And I also know you're a big Chicago Blackhawks fan, because when they won the Stanley Cup, I remember it was one of the years you were the Indians pitching coach, and you wanted to watch those games.
Oh yeah, as I said, anything Chicago. But I grew up watching a lot of hockey games. Back in the days, and Stan Mikita and Pat Coral and Cliff, names Pitt Martin. All of the Blackhawk greats. Bobby and Dennis Hall. I mean, so. And then I lost my way a little bit when I started getting into baseball and playing sports a little bit. And then, when Chicago, when the Blackhawks started winning again, well, I was right back on the bandwagon. But yeah, I've always been a hockey fan.
Well, you're a Chicago guy, and take us back to the day. Not only you were a Chicago guy, but you were originally signed by the Chicago Cubs. I would have to think that was a great thrill. Take us back to that time.
Oh, it was a great time. I played 2.5 years of high school ball. I really didn't get a chance to play a whole lot of baseball when I was young. Never played Little League or any of that stuff. And I used to be in Chicago. What we played a lot was softball. 16-inch clincher, and so I really didn't play a lot of baseball. Didn't know, I played a lot of strikeout, where you throwing balls up against the wall and as a batter and a pitcher. But, I had a couple buddies that ended up playing high school baseball, and I really just went to continue to hang out with them. So I made the team, tried out as a shortstop and outfielder, and they found out pretty quick that I couldn't field and couldn't hit. So I gave it one last shot with the arm. I said, well, I threw a little bit, and I got on the mound, and they said, well, this will work. So I played a couple years, and then I still didn't know a whole lot about it. But so the year when I was drafted in '79, I was out playing softball, and my sister ran out and told me I'd been drafted. And I was like, yeah. And initially I thought, well, to the Army? I wasn't that naive, but literally I didn't know what baseball could do for me as far as my future. And obviously I ended up signing with the Cubs right out of high school. And it was a great time. My family, they were excited. My friends were excited. I mean, it was just a huge time for me, and something I'll never forget.
Well, I remember you coming to Old Bush Stadium to pitch against the Indianapolis Indians.
Oh yeah. I think I ended up facing one of the biggest faces was Eric Davis, and I remember him hitting me around a little bit. That's the only thing I remember about that. But Yeah, Indy, I got a chance to, to see what they were all about early in my career.
Stan, when we look back at your playing career, you pitched for many years, but didn't get to the big leagues. And I think it's an example, and you had some good years too, of how hard it is to get to the major leagues.
Oh, it really is. I mean, as you said, I mean, I played 10 years of minor league ball, and I was a pretty good pitcher. I mean, I was a fourth rounder out of high school, so that bought me some time to develop and all. And then the main thing in baseball, because I think everybody that's signed, I mean, as long as they stay healthy, they should get an opportunity in time. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of guys that are signed and then released in a few years, but the main thing is if you're able to stay healthy, then you're going to increase your chances of getting to the big leagues. And I did that. It was a struggle for me early, but then I seemed to find my niche a little bit, and then I took off, but then I got hurt. The injury bug hit me. It was a shoulder issue. I was on a big league roster for 4 years, both with the Cubs and the A's, and so they had, they had a pretty good plan for me. I just couldn't escape the injury bug, and that's how it usually goes. When you got a little talent, you have to be able to stay healthy, and I wasn't able to do that.
Well, that's unfortunate. Now, during your playing days, was there anybody who was a real big influence on you, whether a coach or another player?
Well, it's funny. There was this guy, Barb Hartsfield, back in this is literally after a couple years in the game, and this was a old, crusty, old time guy that had been in the game, for a good while, and I was struggling, and he moved my arm over a little bit. I was always the guy that was right over the top, and I really didn't have a whole lot of teaching in high school, obviously. Um, but this guy moved me over, and he was a manager. So, I mean, I don't know how much he knew what he was talking about, but it worked out. And that was really the first time that I really felt like, okay, this is going to work for me. Um, Obviously, when I was in high school, I had my high school coach was Jerry Sukala, who was originally a minor league player with the Cubs, and so it was helpful for him to kind of nurse me along and show me a lot of things. But really, in the pro game, a lot of it back in the day, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of teaching. There was a lot of coaching, guys that were in the trenches with you, was able to talk the game, and really navigate you through the ups and downs of the process of becoming a player or pitcher. And so, I mean, I really can't, point the finger at a guy and say, oh man, this guy really was beneficial. But I think it was just a collaboration of, all of those old school guys just kind of, nursing me through a lot of the trials and errors of, competing. Because I mean, for me, it's still the game is the guru. I mean, the more you get a chance to go out and play, the more you're gonna learn the game, and you should be able to process things on your own. But you need people there to be able to bounce some things off of.
We'll look back at Stan Kyle's coaching career after these words. Stan, we met in 2004 when you were the Indianapolis Indians pitching coach the first time. Take us back to what happened from the end of your playing days to 2004 when you got to AAA as a pitching coach.
Bill Hartsfield was the Bill Hartford, I should say, was the farm director with the Cubs, and he was over there when I was a player, and I got to know Bill pretty well. He was another guy that was from the Chicago area, and so I got a chance to see a lot of them, and he asked me if I had any interest in coaching, and I was like, no, I have no interest in coaching. I don't know how to coach, what to do, and and he said, well, I mean, it's a lot of it is about experience and personality and communication skills and all of those things, which I think you have a lot of. But I still didn't buy much of it. So I went home and I worked in Chicago at the Park District. And then after a year there, he called again and say, hey, you thought about it a little bit more. And I said, you know what? I like to give it a shot, just because I missed a game, obviously. And so he said, well, we don't have any situation open now, but I'll send you to the independent league, this team in Bend, Oregon. And so I went out there and got around a group of guys. And I mean, as soon as I was with guys that actually was looking at me and expecting something, some feedback from me. It was like, oh, this is great. I get a chance to talk the game and to groom these guys and get in the trenches with them and work with them and actually try to help them, be what they want to be. And so I loved it, as soon as I stepped on the field. And fortunate. And that's the one thing I look back with Bill Hartford. I mean, giving me that opportunity, because originally I didn't think I had much to offer the game, and he allowed me to do that. So I signed with the Cubs after that season, and the rest is history.
So where were some of the stops until 2004?
I was in Huntsville, Alabama, Double A, a couple seasons there. Was in High Desert in the California League. Geneva, the Geneva Cubs. I was there. All the Albany Con. This is when I went over to. I was traded over, or not traded over, but I went over to the Rockies, which is where I met my wife Monica. I was there with the Asheville Tourists. Went back to Geneva, not to Geneva. I'm sorry, and to Bend, Oregon, with the Rockies. Portland, Oregon. So I mean, I've been in a whole lot of with a whole lot of teams in a lot of areas, but I really started to enjoy it a lot more when I got to Indy. Indy is such a big time city, and the fans were so awesome, and that's when it really became a lot of fun. And of course, you're that much closer to the big league. So even as a coach, as you start getting closer to the big leagues, things start to get a lot more exciting.
What was the difference for you working with pitchers at the AAA level as opposed to those very young kids?
Well, I mean, obviously, when you're at the AAA level, I mean, now you're pretty much fine tuning. Now the game becomes a lot more cerebral. You start, trying to figure out, what your role is in the big leagues and how to prepare better, understanding that it's, how to compete every day, and it's not just about your ability, it's and your talent. It's how much you are willing to put in the work, and and I guess that's the biggest. You in the lower levels, you're still working on your game. You're still honing your skills. You're still doing, some delivery or mechanical adjustments, and really trying to grow into your body. But at the AAA level is when the game really starts getting a little bit more complex, and then you've got to really. I mean, obviously the talent starts to get a pretty much the same. It's a level playing field, and now it's the men that are able to think the game a lot better, which is, I think, is something that I think we're missing a little bit more. Now, I mean, it's a lot of it, and and don't get me wrong, I love the fact that a lot of these guys can throw the ball the way they're able to throw it. And these guys, these big, strong guys, are able to swing the bats the way they're able to do it. But I get a little concerned that we're going to see more great seasons from guys as opposed to great careers. You know, when you look back at, you know, the players that you played against and the guys that you aspire to be like, I mean, these were guys who were able to do it, you know, for 7, 8, 10, 12 years. And they were able to maintain that ability, that peak performance, you know, that, you know, when we all sit back and say, okay, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be a flash in the pan. I want to be a guy that hits my prime early and then I'm able to sustain that prime, you know, for a long period of time. So I think that's where you know, I worry that we'll lose our way a little bit in the game, but the talent itself is exciting to watch.
What percentage of pitching would you say is mechanics? What percentage is mental approach?
Uh, well, I mean, I believe that, and I've heard this, you probably heard this before, and I think it's so true, that everything begins with a thought, you know? So, I mean, I think even when guys are struggling a little bit with their mechanics, more times than not, it's because they're not thinking right, you know, or they're thinking a little bit, they're concerned a little bit too much with their mechanics or the delivery, and they've lost that competition that, you know, that mentality, that competitive mentality that's conducive to being able to work your way through things and such. So, you know, for me, obviously at the big league level and just short of it, the mental game is so important and so, you know, necessary to play this game at a high level and maintain it.
Tell us about your experience. You were for several years the Milwaukee Brewers bullpen coach. You were in the big leagues. What was that like?
Oh, it was a great time. Obviously, you know, I spent a lot of time in the minor leagues, both as a player and a coach, before I got the opportunity to go to the big leagues. And when I got there, it was all I thought it would be. I actually, and I talk to my wife Monica about this all the time. I wish that I had taken the time to enjoy it a little bit more, you know, because when you're up there, you feel like, you know, you've got to make sure you're doing what you have to do and being an asset and all that. And I think I was doing all of those things, but I think there are times when I could have sat back and just took a big whiff and said, you know what, this is really cool, you know. So I mean, the Brewers gave me an opportunity to go there and you know and spend and realize a lifetime dream. And when I look back on it, especially going in 2011, you know, a couple of games away from the World Series, you know, I can remember, you know, when we beat the Arizona Diamondbacks in that critical 5-game series, you know, just sprinting off the field and collapsing, you know, into the arms of LaTroy Hawkins, you know, because I was so worn out from sprinting that I should have known I was too old to sprint that far. But just that feeling of winning and all the the work that we and the effort that we put into to get to that point, that's something I'll never forget.
And you're talking about how the game's changed. Information is valued, but there are a lot of guys like yourself and Butch Weiniger, Don Werner, Joel Skinner, Jeff Bannister, who are out of work right now. And the knowledge you guys have and the people skills you guys have really is being missed.
I think so. I mean, those guys you mentioned, I had a chance to work with a few of them, and man, you know, and I often look back, even though they're hitting guys, just being around, especially Butch Weiniger. I mean, being around Butch all the time and watching him work and seeing what he put into it, and not only, you know, with the work on the field, but just talking to guys, and you know, you realize that, man, that's the way I wanted to be coached. I mean, don't throw a lot of information at me and just say, okay, go after it. walk me through it. Let's talk about this thing. Let's tell me why. And then when you're watching me work, be a soundboard that I can come off the field and talk to you either that time or later on that night or the next day. I needed that feedback, and I would have loved to have had that. And so I think, those guys are invaluable when it comes to that. And I mean, oftentimes we always talk about, our contributions when we were this, and I think the game is in pretty good hands. But I also think that, there's a lot of blending that still needs to happen, whether it's new knowledge and there's that old school understanding, that we understand and say, hey, there's a time to teach, but there's also a time to coach. And I think a lot of times the teaching kind of gets in the way from the coaching. Sometimes we got to let guys fail, and so they can become what they want to become, as opposed to just say, no, you have to do it this way. We have to allow guys to be what their potential tells us they can be. So I think a lot of that is missed, and I think it's invaluable.
Dan, well said. Thank you so much. It's great spending time with you, and enjoyed the years you were with the Indianapolis Indians. It was always a pleasure to be around you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Howard. Always good to talk to you. Looking forward to talking to you again.
It's Stan Kiles. We'll be back after these messages. Thanks to our guest, Stan Kiles. See you next week, everybody.